Guys, welcome again to everyone who joined us to this live webinar. I hope you've all had a great week. Thank you so much for taking the time. And yes, let's get started. So a little bit about me. My name is Adanna Steinacker. I am a medical doctor by profession and an entrepreneur by passion. I founded a company called Medics Abroad, and amongst other things, we manage the logistics of placing healthcare professionals from all over the world to carry out clinical work experience in Africa. I founded this company in 2017. You know what, guys? This is the reality of working from home. Give me a second. I'm going to close this window because I can hear all of the noise coming in. Okay, we are noise free. So where was I? I'm a medical doctor by profession and an entrepreneur by passion. I founded this company, Medics Abroad, that amongst other things, we manage the logistics of placing healthcare professionals from all over the world for clinical work experience in Africa. I founded this company in 2017 at a time where I had to be home for a long time. Unfortunately, I was placed on early maternity leave because I had a complicated pregnancy for my second child. So it did give me time to think and strategize about a new business opportunity, mostly because my toddler at the time was attending creche. So I did have a bit of time on my hands. And so finally in 2018, we launched business operations. I'm a mom of two boys, as you can see on the screen, Kian and Noah. They're 4 and 2 years old. And some of you might recognize me from Adanna David Family, where I create family lifestyle and parenting content. So I guess that also makes me a digital content creator. I've been creating content online for the past 6 years. And my platform has also evolved into a digital consultancy company, A&D Digital, that I run with the help of a small team. I'm also a speaker. I get invited to speak within the two industries that I'm closely affiliated with. So on the one hand is the medical, educational, and healthcare industry, and on the other hand is the digital influencer industry. So now that I've gotten my introduction out of the way, I just want to say what an honor it is to have all of you here today joining me. So let's get right into this webinar. So what I urge you to take away from today's session is changing your mindset in terms of the way we think about business and entrepreneurship. I want you to start thinking about business as a very simplistic problem-solving approach or problem-solving process, let's say, that's supposed to serve you or cater to you. So not to view starting a business or entrepreneurship as something that's very intimidating, but if you think about it as, well, I've identified a problem, this might be my potential solution, it would really, I think it would really encourage a lot more people to explore entrepreneurship. I will also be introducing a 3-point framework that will help you through this process. And since I desperately don't want to bombard you with all of the boring business concepts or textbook theories, I've opted for a very lighter storytelling approach. So in between this, I'm going to be sharing lots of examples of inspiring female entrepreneurs that have started this journey long before us. So the 3-point framework is gonna take you through the process of identifying a problem, conceptualizing the idea of a solution, and then validating that idea by asking the right questions well before you have to turn it into a profitable business. So first things first, let us identify what the problem is. Now, the first question I have for you is, what are your personal pain points? And at the risk of using the word unprecedented, there's by the way, a very recent, this is by the way, Google Trends result of
the use of the word unprecedented, but the fact is we do live in unprecedented times. We're spending more time at home than we ever have. And personally, I think it presents us with the unique opportunity to be more aware of difficulties that we're facing in our immediate surroundings. So the first thing I will urge you to do is to document something that really bothers you. So if you have a pen or a notepad by your side today, I want you to be able to write down one or two things or one or two pain points you've had since the lockdown started. And it could be something you consider very trivial. It could be something you wish looked different, something you wish worked different, or like a solution that existed to take some stress away from you. But I encourage you to take the time to identify what those problems are, because that really is a great place to start. So let's take it back to a problem that humans faced a very long time ago when they were constantly on the move in search of food or safe resting places. It meant that one family member was responsible for holding the baby of the house all through this adventure. And in most cases, it was the women, because the men had to physically go and look for the food. So the solution that people had at that time was anything that can securely anchor the baby to the body. And that in itself was the origin of baby wearing. Back in the day, they used slings or any cloth that they could come across. But as that tradition has evolved, as we've gotten more modern, there's safer, more secure, fancier looking baby carrying products that exist. But ultimately, holding a baby for a prolonged time was something that they at that time identified as a problem. So I want to introduce you to a few successful business women who've also identified problems in their simple everyday lives. My first example is Joy Mangano. She's a successful American entrepreneur who is the founder of the self-wringing miracle mop. And there's also a very interesting movie about her. It's called Joy, starring Jennifer Lawrence. And if you guys haven't watched it, I really urge you to watch it, because I personally found it very interesting. Anyway, in the movie, Joy gets invited to the boat of her father's rich girlfriend. And while she was on the boat, she unfortunately spilled red wine and broke a glass. In the process of cleaning up the mess, Joy identified what a problem it was for her to wring the mop with her bare hands. She had lots of bruises from the broken glass. So for Joy at that time, she had identified a problem, and the idea of a solution was, well, wouldn't it be nice to have a mop that can wring itself? And eventually, ultimately, that led to the invention of the self-wringing miracle mop. But the point here is the problem that Joy identified was in the process of doing a very mundane activity that we all do every day anyway, which is mopping. The next example that I want to bring here is the story of Sarah Blakely. Most of us know her. She's the founder of Spanx. She's another successful American entrepreneur. And what was her problem? I just want to wear white pants to a party and not have anything showing underneath it. Simple. It was a simple problem. She started experimenting by cutting off the feet of her pantyhose, and eventually it led to Spanx as we know it. And the last example that I want to give in terms of identifying a problem is one that's a lot closer to home, because it's about me. So the reason I'm bringing out this example is just to give you an idea of how simplistic the problems you identify can look like. So for me, when the lockdown started, I quickly identified two problems. One was explaining the situation to my 4-year-old, telling him, well, he's no longer going to go to school or go to any public places. But I wanted a consistent story, because at this point I had gotten away with making up like very quick sentences. And obviously, being a very cheeky 4-year-old, I was called out all the time. Like, Mama, this is not what you said yesterday. But anyway, I wanted, that was a pain point for me, explaining the situation in a very creative way. And the second problem was
coping with daily activities for the kids. The kids used to go to creche every day. So I wasn't personally solely responsible for everything that they did throughout the week. We had amazing teachers, but now we were facing with this lockdown. And I just thought to myself, well, I feel pressured because I really don't know what to do. So these were the two problems I had identified. And for me, identifying these problems led me to think, well, what immediate solution can I come up with, and what products can help me deliver these solutions? I'm going to expand more on that as we go through the slide. So now we've identified a problem, and we're now thinking about a solution. And this is what the second point of the framework is going to focus on: how to go about scratching your own itch. Well, I know that thinking about a solution, coming up with a solution with a problem you've already identified, can be pretty daunting, especially when you have the mindset of, well, nothing's new under the sun. Everything has already been invented. What am I supposed to do? But I also want to challenge you to change your mindset when it comes to this process, because you might be faced with problems that require a very new approach, never been heard of solution, in which case you will be an innovator, which is great. But oftentimes you're faced with problems that already have existing solutions, but the solution is not suited to you or your lifestyle or your community. So that's one way to think about a solution. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel. So throwing in a few more examples with more familiar faces are these inspiring women who conceptualize a solution in already existing industries. So we have Michelle Kennedy, the amazing founder of Peanut App, Freddie Harrell, the founder of Ratswan, and Melissa Butler, the founder of the Lip Bar. Question is, what do all these women have in common? My community, my race, my standards. These women had something they believed in. They had something they were inspired by, and they felt like the existing solution didn't cater to them. This is what they felt. They all were able to identify their pain points and realize, well, you know what? The existing solution does not serve me. So if I take Michelle, for example, one of the pain points that Michelle experienced, she's talked about this in a few interviews, and I also believe that was one of the reasons for founding the Peanut App. So Michelle faced the problem where she had difficulty connecting with like-minded women, especially at a time where she had just become a mom. And this is in a society where dating and matchmaking apps already existed, but they just didn't cater to the community that she was looking for. And eventually that led to the birth of Peanut App. Freddie Harrell has spoken extensively about the lack of accessibility for beauty products or hair care products for Black women, whether it's in terms of, the lack of availability in popular stores, the poor quality of products that already exist, or the lack of regulation. So she's channeled all of her energy into building a very conscious, more inclusive beauty brand for Black women. And Melissa Butler, the founder of the Lip Bar, it's very easy for her to think about coming up with a lipstick, and then someone says to her, well, you know what? In this society where there's all these amazing billion-dollar beauty brands coming up with lipstick every day, who needs a new product, right? But for Melissa, she was challenging the beauty standards that already existed. So Melissa wanted to get her makeup done, she wanted to look nice, but she didn't have the time, and from my understanding, the skill to pull that off. Because, let's be honest, except you're a beauty content creator, most of us, especially most of us on the call, if you're a mom, if you're working, or if you're a working mom, you really don't have an hour every day to put on makeup before you go about your business. So she thought about it in terms of simplicity Like, what 6 essential products can I put together that will make a woman feel like she looks as beautiful, that wouldn't take as much time, and that is quick to do? And she put together the Fast Face. And for me personally, that product was my introduction to Melissa. And it's amazing. So for me to reiterate the point that all these women identified a pain point in a society where solutions that existed did not cater to them. So you do not have to reinvent the wheel. Do not feel that pressure that you have to come up with something completely brand new. It's all about taking the time to analyze what's currently existing and then realizing, well, you know what, the current solution does not cater to me, it doesn't cater to my lifestyle, it doesn't cater to my community. So this is my idea of how I can change that. And to reiterate my point again, the story of Madam C.J. Walker is another example that further highlights this. And Self-Made, if you've not already watched it on Netflix, is a series that I highly recommend. It depicts the story of Madam C.J. Walker, who is the first female self-made millionaire in America. Now, Madam C.J. Walker she started off as with a simple problem that she had as a housewife. She experienced really bad hair loss. Eventually, she used a product that, was produced by her, well, at the time, it wasn't her competitor, but she used a product that was already existing that worked for her. The product was amazing. She believed in it. And then she thought to herself, well, you know what? A lot of women in my community are facing the same problem. So I want to sell the product to them. Well, when you watch the series, you will know why that didn't work. But basically, she faced and she experienced a lot of hiccups as far as selling this product. And when that didn't work, she thought to herself, you know what? I'm going to make a very similar product and I will sell it to my community. But this is what made her stand out. She had identified a pain point that other women could relate to. She understood her community. She understood how Black women felt about their hair and what they wanted to improve. She had walked in their shoes. So she was able to innovate the marketing approach to bring this already existing product closer to her community. So it's very important to highlight that the first product that Madam C.J. Walker ever sold was not invented by her. It was invented by Addie Monroe, who ended up being a business rival, but it wasn't invented by her. So for me, my summary for Madam C.J. Walker's life, or her entrepreneurship journey, should I say, is you do not understand my pain points, therefore you cannot sell like me. You do not understand my pain points, so you cannot think like me. It's all about taking it back to a problem that you identify as a pain point for yourself, something that you feel you can closely relate to. Now, with all these women that I've mentioned in the past, this is something they all had in common. They started small. The first time Madam C.J. Walker thought, I am going to make a similar hair care product and sell it to women in my community, she did it in her kitchen. When Joy Mangano thought, you know what, I can visualize this self-wringing mop and I want to have a sketch of what it would look like, she took her daughter's crayons, pen, sketching pad, and she did the first sketch with what she had available. And the same goes for Sarah Blakely. I mean, she's told her story thousands of times that when she started in the beginning, she basically gathered all of her friends and family and got them to package all the product into white envelopes. So she started small. When she fortunately got the opportunity to display her product in Neiman Marcus, I believe, I think it was Neiman Marcus. I don't want to get that wrong now. But she went there physically present, explaining her product to other women and potential customers. So what all of these women have in common is starting small. And the last example of starting small is me again. And I'm highlighting this because it's closer to home. When I mentioned earlier in the slide, the two problems I had immediately identified during the lockdown was explaining the situation to my 4-year-old and having a parenting community that I can get daily activity inspiration from. So when I thought about a solution, it looked like a great book with characters, because we do bedtime stories every night. I know that the boys love books. So I thought, well, there's no coronavirus book that I can see, so I might as well just sketch down my creative ideas of how best to explain this to my 4-year-old. And then eventually I decided to start an online community, Fanfluencers community, as well, to be able to encourage other parents and get daily inspiration. So my point here, and the reason I'm using this example, is because when you think about a solution, we are unfortunately influenced to think big right away. And it's, of course, it's important to think big, but it's important to think big, but start small. And that's what a lot of us are missing. So when it comes to the products that help me deliver my solution, I didn't need any factory to make any products. I didn't need any 10-man team or any fancy, advertising or office space. It was literally the internet. And I'm using this example because a lot of us that are home now, especially if your mom's at home with new kids, you might find yourself in a situation where you're sharing lots of advice to your friends or other women in your community. Maybe now is the best time to launch a blog where you share all of that advice, because it might cater to a wider audience. Also, the blog you launch could be monetized down the road, which is another business opportunity. Now might be the time to think about that ebook, that e-course you've been wanting to do. It's just all about starting small and starting within the confines of what we have easily accessible to us. So we have identified a problem. We've come up with an idea of a solution. Now it's time to validate that idea. And that is what the third part of this framework is going to talk about. So I do understand, I can personally relate to the idea of coming up with a solution to be very daunting, especially when you have, the mindset of, validating your idea. Yeah, validating your idea can come across as very daunting because it's time to differentiate a business from a hobby. You have a business when people are willing to pay for your solution. So validating your idea is all about asking that very difficult question: are people going to pay for my solution? It involves a lot of research, and the best place to start with your research is asking the right questions. So whether you're putting your questions directly into Google for market research, or you're having face-to-face conversation with people or customer profile, this process is all about the questions. It's very important. Do other people have the same problems? Will they benefit from my solution? At this point, I think a lot of us we have an idea of what questions to ask, but the problem is a lot of us don't ask it correctly. Now, I've been told that no matter what you do, do not ask your mother do not ask her if your business idea is great or not. And people say don't do this because your mother is very biased towards you and she'll think everything you do is great, which of course is not a great representation of your potential target audience. So that being said, I would like to introduce you to the mom test. The mom test was founded, or basically introduced, by Rob Fitzpatrick, and is currently being used in leading business programs. It's basically a research technique that teaches you how to craft and ask the right questions in a way that even your mom would not be able to lie to you. So this technique encourages you to ask questions without ever mentioning what the solution will be. And I'll give you an example. So the example I'm going to use here, selling digital cookbooks for the iPad, is the same example that Rob had used in his book. So for example, you're, a budding entrepreneur and you decide to come up with the amazing idea to sell digital cookbooks for the iPad. And then you realize, well, my mom actually loves the iPad. So here is how to fail the mom test. You go up to your mom and you say, hey mom, would you ever buy an app which was like a cookbook for your iPad? Now, of course, your mom is going to say yes. As I highlighted earlier, the people that love you the most are biased. They don't want to hurt your feelings. And generally, they might think that everything you come up with is great. But the question, would you ever, is a very hypothetical question. So even if she says yes, that is a hypothetical answer that doesn't even give you any information about what truly influences her purchasing behavior. And then before she's even broken down the answers, you carry on asking, well, you can share recipes with your friends, you can store your shopping list, there's videos of celebrity chefs. So you're going on throwing out these amazing ideas that, of course, the person you're asking thinks, well, generally, that's a great idea. So of course, I'm gonna tell you it's a great idea. So you trot off thinking, well, I now have the next big deal. But unfortunately, that is not a good representation of your potential customers. Whereas in terms of passing the mom test, as I highlighted to you earlier, is about learning to ask questions and phrasing them in a way that you do not even ever mention what those potential solution might be. So you go up to your mom, oh mom, how's your new iPad treating you? What do you usually do on your iPad? This actually encourages conversation that might expose you to answers you didn't even know that you were looking for. So you might ask, oh mom, what's the last thing you did on your iPad? And then she tells you, oh, you know what, that holiday that I've been looking to go with your dad, I've just looked into if I can book it. So then you ask, well, did you use an app for that? And she tells you, yes, I actually use this amazing app called booking.com. It's amazing. So you've gotten the information that your mom uses apps. That's one sure way to understand if people in her demographic are very app savvy. So you've gotten that information. And then you can ask, how did you find out about other apps? And she might say to you, well, you know what, in the Sunday Times magazine on page 5, there's usually a recommendation of the next best app to download. You have essentially gotten another vital bit of information, which means that your mom's behavior to download an app is influenced by page 5 on Sunday Times. Now, you know that when you launch your business, your marketing strategy, if you're targeting your mom's demographic, is to advertise in the newspapers where you know they read and where you know would potentially influence them to download the app. So the series of questions with passing the mom test is about not giving out your solution too soon so that you do not influence the bias. You do not leave there thinking your idea is great without truly finding the objective research that you're supposed to find out. And unfortunately, this is where a lot of people are very scared, which is understandable. People are scared because, their feelings might be hurt when they're told that their ideas are not great. But it's much better to feel the fear and do it anyway, because the quicker you realize, the quicker you're able to get an objective research opinion, the quicker you can decide how to move on with that potential business idea. And in this case, very experienced serial entrepreneurs, they're very keen to get their ideas validated, whether it turns out good or it turns out bad, because they know that it's either going to be one of two options. Option one, you realize this is a red ocean, no go, there's no demand for this in the market, we're going to park it so that it doesn't burn any money. Whereas option two, you realize, wow, this is a blue ocean, there's a lot of demand in the market, we're going to go with it so that it makes us money. But ultimately, the decision to go with either of these options is heavily influenced by the research or by the data you get while doing your research
to validate that idea. So to conclude, the 3-point framework, it's a very brief overview or summary that takes you through the process of identifying what a pain point is, conceptualizing the idea of a solution, what do you think that's going to look like, and then going to the process of validating that idea, learning how to ask the right questions, and knowing if this potential idea could be turned into a profitable business. And here on the side, these are my recommendations. I mentioned it throughout the presentation as well. The movie Joy talks about, depicts the life of Joy Mangano. Self-Made series on Netflix depicts the life of Madam C.J. Walker. And the mom test is it's a very great research tool to know how to go about asking your questions. So I believe personally that somewhere deep down, we all have that entrepreneurial gene. It's really all about changing the way you think about business, especially in the early stages. I know that it's very difficult to think about business in very simplistic terms because the current landscape we have in the entrepreneurial industry, it really pushes big ideas, big solutions. Like you hear all of the amazing founders raising, funds, amazing team, amazing office buildings. You hear all of that and it's very intimidating. But oftentimes you really need to search for inspiration from other entrepreneurs that started really small. It's really all about starting really small. You don't need a Harvard business degree to identify what problems you're currently facing. Like I didn't need to go to Harvard Business School to realize, well, you know what, I need to explain to my 4-year-old about coronavirus, might write a book, good business opportunity. Like I didn't need to have a business degree to think about that. So you don't need that. You also don't need funding from anybody to conceptualize the solution. Like you can use your imagination, you can think big, you can ask questions. All of these processes are free. And the research is about changing your mindset, putting in the work, understanding that you need to start small, you need to start within the parameters of what you already have. And eventually you will get to the big deal of, talking with investors and having nice office buildings and having like a 10-man team. And in any case, that might not even be your vision. So the idea of entrepreneurship doesn't start and end with groundbreaking on innovative ideas. It could be something very small that caters to the community that you currently live in. You might not have a vision to have like £100 million company 5 years down the line, but that doesn't mean that what you have existing is not a business. As I said, a business exists when you have a solution that customers are willing to pay for. Even if they're paying £1 for it, it doesn't matter. So the whole point of this webinar really is to encourage you in these unprecedented times that we found ourselves to think about business in the most simplistic terms, to look for ideas around us, and don't forget to start small. So with all of that being said, I just want to say a huge thank you so much for joining me. And I will now be taking a few questions if you have any. Hold on. Okay. I don't know if you got, yeah, okay. So I'm gonna be taking any questions. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. Okay, so someone said, I'm scared to start. How do I conquer my fear of starting? Personally, I believe that you can conquer your fear of starting by the realization that starting doesn't necessarily mean it has to be big. Because I feel like the fear of even doing anything is mostly due to the fear of failure, the fear that whatever you start might not be successful. What will other people say? I don't know if this is a great business opportunity, but you can take it back a notch with all of the process that I've explained throughout the presentation. Is you realizing, well, you know what, the problem or your next big business idea could come from a problem that's very little that you've identified within your current surroundings. It's also the realization that the solution you have doesn't have to involve a lot of money. It doesn't have to involve a lot of people. It's about knowing how to ask the right questions to know, can you turn that into a business opportunity? So, in summary, conquering your fear of starting is, I think you can achieve that by telling yourself it doesn't have to be big. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to start small. Okay, so someone says, in terms of starting a business, how does one navigate without much funding? Well, this is very much dependent on what that business idea is. So if I give you an example, if you are going to launch, your business idea has to do with technology, well, that in itself requires a lot of funding. You need developers to build the platform. You need huge investments towards marketing, because once that platform is launched, you already need users on that platform. So there's a lot of logistics or dynamics that goes into starting a tech company, and in which case will require a lot of funding. But if you are starting something very small, okay, so I'm just gonna throw out the most basic idea, which is something that I've done and something I'm considering, is the idea of coming up with either like an ebook or an online course. I personally believe that I don't believe that there is one person living on earth that doesn't have an advice to give or a story to share or a lesson they can teach. And with with us being able to access the internet so easily, you can look into starting small. Like if you wrote a book and uploaded it on the internet and put a link for people to purchase the book for a very small price, you really don't need a lot of funding. So it's really all about starting small. Sarah Blakely, she is one of the few entrepreneurs I know today that own 100% of her company, because she did not seek funding. She bootstrapped her way through building that company to the way that it exists today. So it really is all about what sort of business you're trying to introduce, and understanding that you don't necessarily need a huge amount of money to make the first steps. How do you deal with procrastination and have an indestructible mind while at it? Okay, so procrastination is something everybody has suffered with. You'd be lying to say, even the best and greatest minds have suffered from procrastination. For me, the way that I have battled or combated my procrastination was taking a step back to understand myself and then to trick my brain. So for me, I'm a very competitive person. I know that about myself. I love to have goals, even if it's in the form of a pen and a paper where I write tasks and I put a box. I'm so competitive that at the end of the day, I have to have that box ticked to be able to feel like I've achieved something. So the way that I trick my brain is to make sure that every day I have lists with boxes on the side that I have to check at the end of the day. And that's what really helps me from procrastinating. So, you need to understand yourself, understand what works best for you, and almost trick yourself into believing that you can. Are there any tips on how to nurture this entrepreneurial gene? I'm particularly interested in suggestions for books, if any, but any other tips will be great. Okay, so I would always give you examples that I've personally gone through. And when it comes to nurturing an entrepreneurial gene that we already have, my number one tip is to bombard yourself with inspiration. So you know that you eventually, like the people you surround yourself with, the things you listen to, the books that you read, eventually influences the person that you become. So for me to keep my motivation going as an entrepreneur now, of course, we all suffer from, lack of motivation and whatnot, but to keep my entrepreneurial gene alive, I make a conscious effort to read up on like new entrepreneurial stories, read books, watch videos, watch TEDx talks, watch, kind of influence or infiltrate my brain with information that concerns people who are already in the industry. And that really inspires me. So for me, that's one advice to keep your entrepreneurial gene alive, is to, bombard yourself with their stories, learn more, get inspired. Have you heard of outcome-based funding? I have been hearing a lot about these, especially when you have a story to share. I've actually not. I'm going to make a note of that. Outcome-based funding. Thank you. I have learned something new. So no, I don't know. So I can't really give my opinion on that. Sorry. Hi, Donna. Thanks for the webinar. How does one strike a balance with focusing on starting a business and spending quality time with the baby? The sacrifice. It is the sacrifice, honestly. So, I mean, in the beginning of the slide, I did give an introduction, about myself and everything that I kind of have my hands in. Sometimes I feel very overwhelmed, and other times I really ask myself, well, how am I managing to do all these things while being a mom? And I realize it's the sacrifice. So one motto that I love to go by is to spend a few years of your life working like most people don't, so that you can spend the rest of your life living like most people can't. I had heard that from this entrepreneur. Well, he founded a company with his wife, and they're very amazing and successful. And when I try to dig into how they've achieved what they have, because they also have a baby the same age as one of my sons, and he basically just threw that line at me. And I said to myself, well, you know what, that makes sense. Because on the one hand, well, as a medical professional, I know the benefits of getting quality sleep and quality rest and being relaxed and having your mind centered and all that. I do. But I also understand that, well, without sacrifice, you can't really achieve things that you've set yourself out to achieve. And it's all about getting that balance. How do I achieve that balance? I do a lot of work when my kids go to bed. So in terms of spending time with the baby, not a bother. My husband and I, at the moment, with working from home, we're working half days. So when I have to, be with the kids either in the morning or in the afternoon, I'm there. All of my attention is there. And I spend quality time with the boys, and I don't feel guilty about it. But then when they go to bed, I could do so many other things. I could, just chill and watch Netflix all night, every night. I can go to bed to sleep. But then I understand, well, in order for me to achieve half the things on my, goals list, I have to make a sacrifice. So the balance for me is sacrifice. Is sacrificing that extra bit of sleep so that I can spend quality time with my children during the day and get back to working at night. How do you remain accountable? Do you think you should find a mentor? Absolutely, 100%. There is not one amazing person on this planet that did not have somebody that came before them or somebody that advised them. I'm a huge believer in mentorship. I love it. I've mentored a lot of people, a lot of students in the healthcare profession. I think it's important to have a mentor, not just for accountability, but for inspiration, for advice, for things that you think are very unclear. I really do think that you should find a mentor. It could be somebody in your close circle. So you can start off asking
questions. Obviously, these might not be questions directly relating to the current business opportunity that you have. You have to be mindful about not failing the mom test, but asking questions and having somebody there to answer them, to hold your hand through the process, is extremely valuable. So if you don't already have a mentor, I would advise you to get one. And how can we approach regarding mentorship? Oh, I don't know if you meant how can you approach me specifically, or how can you approach somebody regarding mentorship? So, well, for me, obviously, my mentorship aspect, it has to be within the two industries that I'm affiliated with. So either the medical, education, or healthcare industry, or the digital influencer industry. But as far as entrepreneurship, I do have a couple of mentors as well. And these mentors, when I actually started as an entrepreneur and I thought about the idea of mentorship, I really did think it had to be somebody like 50 years older, somebody who has a wealth of experience, who has multi-billion-dollar companies, all that stuff. But actually, I realized that the best mentorship I get are from peers or from friends. So I was fortunate to attend an accelerator program when I started the journey of entrepreneurship. And right now, two of my most valuable mentors are fellow entrepreneurs who were in that accelerator program as well. So me coming from a very medical background, I really didn't know jack about business. But these people that I met there, they did have a better idea about business. They knew how to run accounts. They knew how to do 5-year financial projections and all these technical terms that come with starting a business. And through just having random chats, asking questions, getting their opinions about things, I realized, well, this is actually a great mentorship situation. And they agreed to have calls with me weekly to address any concerns that I have. Yeah, so going about mentorship doesn't necessarily mean that you have to start going into some deep, dark search to pull out somebody who you don't even know and who doesn't know you. Mentorship can be within your immediate circle. Okay, so I've pretty much gone through all the questions at this time, and this has brought me to the end of this webinar. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you that took the time to tune in. Okay, there's no more questions. Yeah. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. I wish you guys all the best for the rest of the week. And I will catch you on my Instagram story. I'm there every day. So see you there. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.